Hey everybody, welcome to the part 2 of my Throwback Thursday series on 2009 Space Hulk, where I am prepping this classic two-player game of alien terror in space to play the first mission. If you missed part 1, basically it was planning an assembly. I assembled one squad of Space Marine Terminators, Blood Angel Terminators with a flamethrower, 3 guys with power fists, this is one of them, and a sergeant, and then 11 Genestealers, the second squad, I guess, of just Genestealers, that are just like regular. They're basically half the box for both. I also got all of my deck plating bases together, and this video, if you guys haven't watched it yet, is going to be a paint plan building. This is like the step 2 I do whenever I do a project like this. I take the miniatures that I need to paint to get the first thing done, and I do my process building. And I usually do that through Basecoats and Washes. So I grab everything, I spray it all typically one color, because especially when you're doing a board game, having everything come up from a common tone is very handy. Everything has like the same underlying kind of like palette, and then you can work the colors up from there. This is oxidized bronze, or bronze oxide, I think, from, it's a Rust-Oleum Painter's Touch. And it works for metal, it's gonna work for the blue and the purple on this Genestealer, and it's brown enough it's gonna work well for the red on the Space Marine too. And we're gonna go from big colors to small colors. So whenever I teach painting, also, we're not gonna use any fancy tools today. We're gonna use brushes, and we're gonna use some chunks of cardboard for our dry brushing. We're gonna use a tank brush that's like probably 20 years old. This is a Citadel tank brush from probably 2003. That's still got many tanks left to paint in it, but I love for dry brushing. Some like basic Kolinsky Sable, like 00 brushes. I think the newest thing here probably is gonna be this AK Interactive wash brush, which is just a nice wide end brush. And I actually like using it for detailed dry brushing more than anything else. And then a handful of just other random brushes for my brush thing here. I did a blast from the past. For my Genestealer, I've got some Fire Dragon Crimson. This paint is at least 30 years old. And I haven't touched it in at least 5 years. And when I opened it, I did nothing to this paint. It is brand new, basically. Man, the old Citadel paints are they're just built different. They're just completely built different. And then I have a repro of that era too from Coat d'Arms, a water-based shocking pink, which I think is titillating pink. I figured using some old school paints was appropriate for this project because it's so old school. So yeah, so whenever I start a project like this, like I said, I try and do all 3 miniatures at the same time so that I can standardize my painting process, because then I'll take the rest of them and I'll production line paint them. I go from biggest colors to smallest colors, and I go from underlying colors up. So when I'm gonna start with these guys, there will be some individual colors that will be big colors. So for instance, right on the Space Marine Terminator, it's going to be, I believe I'm gonna use Cantor Blue for the carapace on this Genestealer. And then we're gonna go over all the metallic bits with some Iron Warriors for some metallic stuff. And we're just gonna dive right in and do this. So I'm gonna start with the red. Red for that Space Marine Terminator, I'm gonna go dark red first, so we're gonna go Word Bearers red. And we're just gonna lump this on with this old ass tank brush. So just grabbing some paint, getting a chunk of cardboard here, because that's you can buy a piece of corrugated cardboard. You can buy these like prep your brush for dry brushing brushes. Man, it won't do anything that a piece of cardboard doesn't do. I would literally never pay money for that. And then we're just gonna get all this. Oh geez, it popped up this thing already. We're just gonna I'm not even bother. I'll put it back on in a second. I'm just gonna brush all this armor, this Word Bearers red. And I'm not gonna worry about getting on there, because like I said, we're doing big colors to small colors here, right? This is about painting finer and finer detail, basically, so that you're painting over all of the overpaint as you go. It's kind of like doing all your airbrushing first, where once you've done all your airbrushing, you go back in and you just do finer and finer details and you work your way down. Dry brushing is just airbrushing without an airbrush. It's just getting colors down and allowing that dark oxide color to stay in the recesses. So I'm gonna do this first one, and then I'm gonna let it dry. And I'm gonna grab another Terminator and do exactly the same thing. So just all 5 Terminators, I wanna have be this red by the time it's done. So there's number 1. We're just gonna move on to the next one. Give him, I need to be a little bit higher up there. There we go, he's got him in focus. I need to figure out where to keep this for the focal length to be right. And when it was on the handle, I was holding it a little bit higher, so I will put this back on the handle actually afterwards. I'm just gonna grab the next one. And this guy's got a Genestealer in his hands, which is handy. Get it, get it. And dry brush him too. I'm gonna do all these reds now, because that way they're all consistently done. And I think I'll just do that, because I'll save the whatchamacallit, the Genestealers for later. I'm just gonna do the Space Marines this way. But this is a great rich red. And you can see here that oxide. I think a lot of people probably watching this were like, why would he do that weird brown gray underneath? And now you can kind of see it it pops that red really nicely. And it has a warm tone to it, right? I guess what is it, the bronzeness of it keeps that going. All right, a couple more to go. Take him off the handle. And again, this is just a dry brush, so I'm not super worried about making a mess. I got my, oh geez, come back here. It's flying at the door at me. They're not on proper bases, right? So they're not, there's like hard edges. It's having a hard time staying on the handle because it's not going into the little lip holder that's on these handles. And we'll just bang some red on these guys. And then we're gonna go progressively lighter. We're gonna go 2 shades lighter with Mephiston. And I think the other one's actually called like, there's like a dry paint that's like a Blood Angel red. And we're just gonna dry brush that over. And I'm gonna worry about the edges and stuff and cleaning it all up with like washes and highlights later, but that'll be a separate video. We're just getting the core colors down right now, and we're not worrying about too much of a mess. Because like I said, it's gonna get cleaned up as we go down smaller and smaller in detail. All right, here's Sergeant Lorenzo riding the Benzo. This is one of the nicest Space Marine miniatures ever made. It's so funny how this thing's in a board game, and it's literally, I think it's probably one of my favorite all-time. Like, he's just a sergeant, but he could easily be a Space Marine captain in any other army, and he got used as a Blood Angel captain like all the time. All the time. Because he's such a nice sculpt. Super easy to build, has that cool kind of like, it's not really a cape, it's like a weird flowing, I don't know, anime cape. like it's like individual pieces of leather or something. I went flying off already. He's done. And then last but not least, I like this guy because he's the data guy. He's got his little Scantron on his hand there, which I think is awesome. And that red goes down quick. I really like this. If you're ever looking to start red, and again, I always start red from brown typically when I'm working my way up as a base tone, to just get that underlying warmth. That Wordbearer's red is a great color. It's one of my favorite of the new modern Citadel color range. And like I said, we're just banging this on here. This old tank brush, oh, done a lot of miles together. If anyone owns one of these Citadel tank brushes and covets them the way I do, never let it go. Clean it, take care of it, wash it with brush soap. I probably have 10 of these things, and I think this red one, the blue handled ones aren't quite as good a shape. I like how I'm talking about Throwback Thursday paintbrushes here. The blue ones aren't quite as good, I think, color-wise as these are. All right, and now the first one will be dry, as you can see here, now that I've done the fourth one. And we're gonna go up to the next shade higher, which is that Mephiston red. I'm gonna grab some of that. I'm not gonna worry about cleaning my brush at all, because I actually don't mind having a bit of that prior color in there. I'm gonna go down on the palette, get that to a nice consistency, and then just top down, get in that dry brush, warming up that red a little bit. That's already making all that detail pop out. Just those two colors. God, these are nice Terminators. It's crazy to me that this board game was as cheap as it was, considering what you got in it, like how many miniatures you got in it, and the quality of these miniatures I don't think has ever really been surpassed. I think you were second there, brother Spine Ripper. Get some of that Mephiston. And you're a little bit wet still, so I'm just gonna go gentle on you. And while you do that, let's catch up with the chat and see what's going on. Gene Dean's here. Potshot 506 is here. Jack Fletcher's here. It's All Fun and Games is here. Dan Fox here. Oh my God, I thought it was only pee through that terrible bottle type. Yeah, but yet it can keep paint fresh. Yeah, it's funny. These old flip tops, these white flip top paint bottles are some of the oldest, but they were all made by different manufacturers, and I think they were imitated a lot. Whatever that original 1980s chemical factory that was making the GW paints was, they had the absolute best paint pots. I have never seen a paint pot be better and hold the colors better. I have paints from the 80s that are still in better shape than 90% of the paints I own. Like I just went through and like was looking for like an equivalent of like old Shadow Gray or the Fang for these Genestealers and couldn't, and like there was like 3 modern paints. They were all dried up because I have way too many paints and didn't see them all. And I don't go through and water my paints over the years. But as soon as I opened that 80s paint, it was completely fine. I was just like, yeah, things were built different back then. Things were just, it was a different time. You bought paints once and then used them for 30 years. Oh man. All right, get that red down there. Dan Fox says, haven't you heard you're never supposed to use cardboard for dry brushing anymore? But I ignore this myself. The red brushes are the pinnacle of affordable, durable GW brushes. I have 2 or 3 left. The red GW brushes are absolutely fantastic. Tell me, guys, if this ever goes out of focus, because I'm trying to keep this in the correct focal length, and I think that's it right there is the most in focus. All right, I got 2 left. All right, Jordy, strap your skates on. With your little, your little Scantron-matic. And get that next red in. And again, I'm not worried about it drying too much because it's just gonna blend. These nice, soft, old Citadel tank brushes. If anybody watching this in the future or in the chat right now knows a good equivalent of this red-handled Citadel brush, I bet Dave Taylor knows. If any human being on Earth would have obsessively researched where to get a brush as good as this, Jake and Dave would have done that on Build Paint Play. They will. Dave Taylor or Jake will know which of these or where to get a brush like this. But if they don't answer, it doesn't exist. But maybe somebody in the chat knows, in which case we will all be very happy because these dry brushes were amazing. Like this guy's got blood like literally coming off of his hand because he apparently killed a Genestealer, like slapped a Genestealer to death right before heavy flaming it. And I do not appreciate the irony of using a dry brush to return these to the color they used to be. Right? These came out in red plastic. The board gamer in me is just like, why did I even bother painting any of this? All right, there's the red all done. We're gonna do one final, but I'm gonna let these guys dry for a minute. So I'm gonna, do I wanna do that? I just wanna do the final now. Because Astaroth red is the last of the colors I would do up on here. Hell with it, let's just do it. Let's just do a little Astaroth red. This is a dry paint. And you can see it's 1 shade lighter. Let's just dive in and do it. Let's get crazy. Pointy guy first. He's gonna get, just again, a little top down, dry brush to pick up those leading edges. And this is basically just like zenithal airbrushing, but with a brush. Zenithal airbrushing, but brushing. Actual brushing. Top of all those colors. Done. Next one. Done. Grab a little more of that paint. I do say that although I've had mixed success with them, the Citadel dry paints, when they're a good one, they're a really good one. This red in particular, I find really, really good. I've never had a problem with it, and it doesn't seem to dry. Like I've had this one for a while and it hasn't dried out too fast, so the pot's been good on it. But I've also had other ones like the dark, the like light gray and stuff like that have just immediately gone to shit. They're just immediately like, they've dried out and gotten crunchy, and then the paintbrush doesn't even pick any paint up anymore, and I'm just like immediately furious about it and don't ever want to use it again. Move this palette, it's like the palette's blowing out the camera because it's so red. All right there, goggles. Let's do you. Looking pretty red there, boys. Looking pretty blood angel-y. And then Lorenzo is my last one. That's it, red's done. All right, so let's do some of the Genestealers now. We're gonna do Cantor Blue, and then we're gonna do a little bit of Fenris Gray over top of the Cantor Blue. Oh God, come back. You guys go over there. I'm gonna put the original guy back on here because I just wanted to do all the reds right now. We'll do the rest of the base coating after this. And washes. Now, this Genestealer, I would debate whether or not I would do the silver first, or the Iron Warriors first for the deck plating these on, and then do the Genestealer afterwards. But the way he's gripping this, I think I will probably end up doing less of a mess, getting all the metallics second. So I think I'm gonna do the Genestealer first with a slightly smaller brush, and then I'll do the metallics afterwards. I'm gonna give this red handled brush a rest, clean it off a little bit. And I'm actually going to use this AK interactive brush. This it's not supposed to be a dry brush, it's supposed to be a wash brush, but it's the same bristle consistency as that tank brush is. And so I tend to hunt down brushes that might not actually be meant for dry brushing, but do a great job at dry brushing. Torben Kassenberg's here. Can you even say you're painting if you're not priming the exact same color as plastic? Maybe not. And then Gene says, in watching other painting YouTubers, I immediately tune out when the person does the easy and fast 3 airbrush colors. I mean, this is just that with a paintbrush, so I wouldn't knock those guys for doing easy and fast airbrush colors if I'm literally just doing the exact same thing, except with I'm doing it by hand with a paintbrush, because that's all this is. There's nothing that isn't exactly the same. All right, let's get some of this blue. And I'm just gonna do Cantor Blue as a base because it'll cover this really well, I think. And just get the carapace down. So remember, the carapace is all gonna be that blue, and then the skin bits are all going to be the purple and pink. So I'm just gonna try and get the carapace done here, and I'll do the skin bits afterwards. Because I'm doing these old school Genestealers, baby. None of this beige and red and whatever. These are Genestealers, man. They're purple and blue. I want them wearing their purple blue pajamas. Especially because these look like old Genestealers. They look like modern takes on the original Genestealer. I don't wanna not do them nostalgia blue and purple. I'm just gonna do the one just now though, because it'll probably take a little bit more time to do the Genestealers and the Space Marines, because I'm going around all of the metallic and stuff. If they were just 40K Genestealers, I would do them all at the same time and do them super fast, but they are not. Grab a little bit more of this. And all I can think about right now is the fact that I still haven't seen Alien Romulus, so don't spoil it for me. Although I've heard it is both a wonderful nostalgia trip through every other Alien movie and also a pretty good Alien movie in its own right. So I'm not having some spoilers told to me just because I listen to a lot of podcasts that have been talking about it. Whoops. Yeah, these handles were both a good idea and a terrible idea. They're a good idea because they're keeping me off this thing, but these aren't on proper bases, so they're not holding them as well as I would have liked. All right, so that's done, and now let's get ourselves some of the Fang. And again, we're just gonna go right into the Fang from the last color and let them blend together a little bit, and then give this another dry brush. Because remember, I'm gonna highlight all this again afterwards. So just throwing the Fang over top of this is gonna give it that classic Genestealer gray. Can you tell I've painted hundreds of Genestealers in my life? Because I absolutely have painted hundreds of Genestealers in my life. And there was a time where a set like this, I would sweat every detail on, because I'd be but I might never get this again. I don't feel that way about this kind of stuff anymore. I feel like it needs to be used and loved, and to give it a paint job that is a gamer's paint job almost feels like more of a love letter, if that makes sense. Not so much of a like an idealized paint job, I think I wouldn't have as much fun with them. I want to treat them like gaming pieces, like board game pieces, and paint them as if I was a more skilled version of myself at, 17, 18 years old, painting 40K armies. All right, and then a little bit of last color, Lothern Blue. I'm just gonna do a third sort of like layer with this, blend it in, and not too much of it, but just like enough that I get a third stage. I'm doing 3 stages of dry brushing on the Space Marines. I just feel like these guys also deserve it. And doing that into the Fang should just lighten it up enough that I get a nice glow on these. It's not a super heavy pigment, but it'll go light enough that it'll make all the details pop and make them look like old school Genestealers. And the nice thing is I have this video to refer back to because I make all of these color schemes up as I go, and I do it all, I paint by eye. Like, I don't have any plan for how I'm gonna paint these things. I grab paints I think I'm gonna need and then I blend them on the go. Half the time I can never remember what I did when I'm painting these by myself. So the great thing about these videos is I'm probably gonna remember how to do this in the future and remember what and how I actually did this paint job. So I'm kind of excited about that because that'll be a new thing for me. All right, so there's the Genestealer himself done. And so these are our biggest colors, right? So this is the big blue or dark blue. We're gonna do the metallics now. And I'm gonna dry brush some of this Iron Warriors, right? I'm gonna let him dry for a minute. You know what? I could do his hands actually first. I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna do the Iron Warriors. I take it back. I'm gonna pop this guy open. Fire Dragon Crimson, and see how that looks after 30 years. I don't think I've actually painted anything in this color in at least 10 years. I used this on some of the Rogue Trader miniatures that I painted for that Rogue Trader series with Chris, like on purpose, just to say that I used this old paint. I don't think I actually opened it since then, which is very funny. Oh my God, look at how great these are. Just get in there, get those hands, get all the little like gubbins, all his little like tubes, his in-between tubes. I'm not super worried about dry brushing those like really well. I'm just getting the colors down here. And this is less dry brushing and more just kind of like rough base coating. Like base coating with like the intention that some of that whatchamacallit, that bottom layer still shows through, right? I keep checking the camera to make sure that it's where it's supposed to be and that it's high enough. I'm trying really hard to keep this in focus this time. I had to like manually adjust the focal length so that it stayed where I wanted it to be on this zoom lens because it's way up in the air. It's probably like 8 feet in front of me. So I've got like a 140 zoom lens on it. All right, a little bit more paint there. Just about done. And then throw in some of that titillating pink. I like how the arm on this is broken. So like I have to go grab, like take the actual like top off of it. All right, get that foot in there. Make sure that hand's got some purple on it. Make sure that any little in-betweens get painted. Like these. And like these. And once again, I'm going to touch all this up afterwards. So I'm not really super worried about the overspill right onto the different colors. This is just a base coat. This is just getting those basic colors down. All right, and then some of this shocking pink. Turbin says, looking at my stream, I'm really regretting that I sold my old Space Hulk. Darish says, I still had a copy of it. I was out of the hobby when it was on sale. And then Dan says, I was just about to ask if you had an opinion on Romulus, but I'm glad I'm not the only one who hasn't seen it yet. Yeah, I know, I'm waiting. I'm waiting. Soon, soon, soon. All right, and then we're gonna dry brush down some of this shocking pink. Oh man, they're already looking like Genestealers. Like, if you were just like a board game basics painter, this Genestealer is almost done, right? Like, you just need to do his claws and you could call him finished. We're just going for basic blocked in colors here. And again, the order you go in is so important because if you just go biggest colors to smallest colors, you will save yourself so much time and heartbreak because you're making your mess now and you're not cleaning up stuff that you'd already like painstakingly painted. I'm not going to bother going over those tubes. I'll go in and highlight that afterwards. I'm just trying to get like a slightly lighter pink down right now. All right, there we go. Let's do those metallics now. Shut these guys up. And I'm not gonna do all the Terminators here. I was just trying to get that red on the Terminators because there's way less of them than Genestealers. So I figured I would do it now. I think this of the Genestealers has the most metal, which was why I picked him, so we can see how this gets dry brushed. All right, clean that off. Get some of that Iron Warrior. You know what, we'll do him second actually. We'll let him dry for a minute, and we'll do the Marine. And this guy's real easy. Just gonna do the gun and the base. Whole gun, whole base. And I'm not even gonna bother dry brushing. This is just gonna be base coating with whatever this big old starter brush is. Just throwing down some metallics. Wherever I think metallics should go. So it would also be his face, like this little respirator right here. I typically do metallic on Terminators. His tracking sight up top there, I typically do metallic as well. So I'll throw some on that. And then also, I'll finish that gun. I get distracted because I'm like, ooh, I could just quickly do this. And then I forget halfway through that I'm doing something else. My ADHD brain kicks in and I'm like, I'm halfway through a task and I just switch over to something different because I get distracted mid-sentence. And then, yeah, we'll finish up that and then just work our way to the left. Just searching for details. I want that pistol grip to get painted. I think that's all the way around on there. I want these vents on his back to get painted. So just throwing some of that metallic in there. And again, I'm not worried about getting the recesses because I'm gonna wash this afterwards, right? And that wash is gonna get in there and finish that off too. I'm gonna paint this typically, this little vent or buttons or whatever the hell it is. And then I do the backs of the legs because I typically do those metallic as well, those little seals. Although sometimes I'll do them dark gray and wash them like they're rubber because they could also be rubber. I like that idea as well. And then it's this one on the back, right here. And that's pretty much it. I think it's just the seals in the hand. Yeah, the seals in the hand right there. And on the inner arm. And then because these are like non-standard Terminators, sometimes they have like weird stuff too. Like this guy has this like little, I don't know if it's like a sight, whatever this little scanny do is on his power fist. Feels like a bad place to put a piece of like technology because he's gonna be punching things with that hand all the time. Like it would just break off, but it's fine. It's just extra detail. So why not put some paint on it? And I think that's, oh no, there's these little guys at the back of his foot too. More little seals, weird little seals that I'll put some paint on. That's looking pretty good. There's a chain in the front there that I think I'll do. Now I usually do the wax seals on Terminators green on Blood Angels because it's red on all their Space Marines, but if you do it green on Blood Angels, then it pops. And then I'll do a base coat of brown, like a snakebite leather on the rest of it. So that's my first level of metallic. I'm gonna go over to here, do the same thing on this guy, but I'm gonna use a bigger brush. I'm actually gonna dry brush this because he doesn't have any metallic details. He's just got a metallic base, right? So I'm just gonna carefully with this like small-ended thing brush in. I'm gonna avoid those skulls because I'm probably gonna do those in bronze because I'm assuming like the Imperial Starship wouldn't have human skulls everywhere, would they? That would be weird. They're supposed to be the good guys. They wouldn't stack the skulls of their own crew. They probably would. They probably would. They're not. They're a little weird. And I'm not going to worry about getting too crazy with the edge of this too, because I'll probably go and touch up the actual base bottom later on. It's more this big chunk of machinery that I'm worried about. I'm not going to worry about the Terminator's base either right now. I'm just worried about this big chunk of machinery because I'm going to go finish that separately. And that way, as I'm handling it, like paint's going to wear off. I'm not going to worry about any damage I'm doing to it while I'm painting these models. Anything you're handling, paint last, right? Because you're gonna always have a chance that you're gonna damage the paint job you've already done. And so you want to make sure that you do it at the very final stage when the least amount of handling of the miniature is going to happen. All right, what's going on, chat? Torben saying, evening everybody. In watching other painting YouTubers, no, wait, where those already? Just stuffing skulls in the ship support beams to go crazy. Yeah, that's the only comment we got so far. Yeah, they probably are, just as ballast, just using them for ballast. And then last but not least, I'm gonna do this door frame, and like this is almost finished at this point because I'm just gonna wash it afterwards. So just dry brushing this and using that diamond plating as the detail to pop out. These are really just gonna get dry brushed once, washed, and then dry brushed again to pick out the edge details and be called finished. Doing a painting tutorial on these deck plates is almost pointless, but because most of it's being done with 2 levels of dry brush and the base coat itself. All right, so that was the metallic. I'm gonna go through now and do, sorry, the first level of metallic. I'm gonna go through and do the bronze now. And use, what did I find in my box? Rune Lord Brass. Yeah, that looks like a cool GWE color. Named after a dwarf, so I immediately appreciate it. And I'll just stick with the Genestealer there for a second. Put some of this down here, get it dry brushed off. I'm just gonna do this pile of skulls. Because why wouldn't I? Make them brass skulls. And I'll give them a wash in a bit, but that gives this a little bit of pop, a little bit more than just doing them solid metallic, right? I'll probably put some yellow on later for the all the tubes and stuff, all the little vents and tubes, but I'm just doing big colors right now, and this is a big color. So I'll get in there and get it with this brush so that I don't get any on the Genestealer itself. And then I'll grab that small base coat brush. You know what, and I'll do this too. Little actuator. Just any other place of interest really that I might want to have be a differentiated color. I'll give some of this Rune Lord Brass too. A couple of skulls there I missed. And then we're gonna go back and get all the gold on this Terminator. And I think it's gonna be gold. It's gonna start off this brass color and we'll work up from there. All right. And boy howdy, are these guys covered in gold. They have all the gold. So put some paint on my palette. And we're gonna do Chest Eagle. Yeah, Chest Eagle. It's just a base coat again, so I'm not super worried about it being messy. We can touch all this up later. These guys don't have like super, I'm gonna do all the blood drops. I'll do them in black actually. Just the filigree right now in gold. Do the blood drops in black. Yeah, their chapter symbol is just like an Aquila with a blood drop in it here. They don't have like standard chapter symbols. These are all fancy boys. Exceptionally fancy in all their details. It's a little double-headed eagle with a blood drop in it. And then little Crux Terminatus on his shin plate, which we'll get in that color. His Crux Terminatus that has like a, whatchamacallit, what's it called? Purity seal, like halfway through it. It's only half of it's actually gold. Oh, I got some. Here's a trick. Do a mistake, wet your brush. Use a wet brush, you can get that paint right off. I realized I got a little bit too exuberant there, but that paint's still wet. So nice wet brush. Bye-bye goes the paint. Fixed my mistake. Go back and clean it up. And I think that's all I want to do in gold on him. That looks pretty good. Yeah, because I'm gonna do all those blood drops in black. Oh, I did notice that, and this is what happens when I start doing things halfway. I missed a little bit of that metallic on the piping on the back of his arm there. Right when I said my ADHD brain was kicking in, I immediately missed something. All right, so then second stage of those, we're gonna get a dry paint called Golden Griffin, and this will be our second layer for the bronzes and stuff like that. And I'll go switch back over to the Genestealer, switch back over to my dryer, my AK wash brush. That's kind of a dry brush here. And I'm pretty sure this one's still good. Yeah, it feels good, still good. Again, I'm so hit or miss with these. Sometimes they just instantly stop working. I don't know why, but I'm just gonna do the exact same thing again, just hit it with like a top line of this, just to make it pop a little bit more before I throw the wash down. Because you can always go brighter, you're gonna darken it with the wash, right? So going a little bit brighter than you think you need to in spots is totally fine, because the wash is gonna be like a filter over top of it. And then same with these little indents that I had. And this guy, and this guy. There we go. And then same over here. Although I'm not super worried about these again, because like I said, all the Terminator's details are going to get touched up again later. Just a little, just bang it with the Spice Weasel, right? Looks good. And then I think this guy's pretty much base coated. There's nothing, oh no, sorry, his claws. I gotta do his claws still. But we'll save the claws because there's a color I wanna do on both these. You know what, we'll do the claws first actually. And I'm going to use lots of dry paint. This is what I want, Scrag Brown for the claws, because I'm gonna blend them up later on. And I want that in the sort of like the deep darkness of it, but I also want to use that same color for all my purity seals. This is what I'm talking about when I talk about using similar colors across the whole project. It means that you can save time and base coat both like halves of this in one go. So just the little talons, the end of his fingers there. I want the big rending talons, or rending claws, sorry. Paint those colors, and I'll do his little toe claws too in this color. And then all my purity seals are gonna get blended up to beige as well. And I'll get that nice old tea-stained paper look from this. Send off in the chat if I'm like, what percentage I'm holding these in focus for, you think? I need an attaboy. I need to know how I'm doing because I'm trying really hard to keep these where I think they're gonna be. And my body's going like, no, sit where you're comfortable. And it's not that it's uncomfortable, it's that like I will typically move around a lot when I'm painting just to be able to see things. And I'm trying to both move the model, which is the handy thing about these Citadel painting handles, you can spin it really easily, and also keep it generally in the same focal range. There we go. So now that is generally done being base coated, right? Those are all the base coat colors. And again, for some people, that's done, right? Like that could very easily for a lot of people be like, no, I'm finished. That's a done Genestealer. There is nothing else required here. And I'll use that same color for all these purity seals. And again, this is the time-saving trick, right? If you can find a paint plan where you pollinate a lot of these colors, one, the whole set's gonna look more cohesive because you're using a similar like paint style on both. You're using a similar sort of like a similar palette basically for the entire project. So it's gonna look like it comes from the same well basically. And two, you're saving yourself a ton of time. There's no reason not to do that. And that's why doing like a project sort of like proof of concept like this will end up making the whole thing go quicker. All right, we're just about done there. And these are all this is just the next biggest color down. So when I said go from big colors to small colors, this is what I'm talking about, right? Like whatever the most prominent color is on the model, go down to the next one, the next one, the next one. And when you're done, enough of those, doesn't have to be all the colors, but enough of those that you're ready to throw down some washes and walk away. Be done, take a break. I'm pretty confident these two are gonna look good. Be easy to do. And overall achieve the goal of getting this box painted so I can play Suicide Mission. Again, I pulled that in so I could see it. I'm pretty sure it went off camera there for a second. All good. All right, and then a little green for the wax. So I gotta pick a green here. I think I have exactly the green I want. And again, I'm gonna go lighter than I probably normally would. I'm gonna go with Warpstone Glow because I'm gonna wash it, it's gonna darken down. So that Warpstone Glow with a little bit of, oh geez, it's separated like crazy. Everyone's gonna yell at me like, what do you use Citadel paints? Well, because they're the most common paints people use, and so they're what I grabbed. They're what I had in front of me, and I have many other paints. These are the ones that I commonly paint with. And when you have so many paints, there's also not really a lot of incentive to buy new ones. Paints are paints, man. People will say that yes, there's an advantage to using certain types of paints, and certain quality of paints are higher quality. And they're absolutely right, they are higher quality. But at a certain level of painting, that's just not relevant. They're not gonna paint the miniature for you. Paint with what you're comfortable with, and paint with a range where you can reach for a color quickly and not get selection paralysis. And you will get more painting done because there's no right way to paint a miniature. Yeah, green looks good, that pops nicely. It makes the purity seals contrast from the main body of the miniature. One weird thing about these guys is that not every one of the purity seals ends in a stamp. Some of them go into like under the armor plates. But I think that's that. I think that's all the base coats I need to do. I think that's pretty much it, because everything else is a detail. Like the blood drops I'm all gonna do in black and white, so I'm not gonna bother with them because I'm gonna put washes down now, it's gonna be messy. So I think the last thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go back to that Iron Warriors and I'm gonna do his base, just so that I can get a wash down on it. I'm not gonna worry about the sides because I'll do those later, but now that I've got all the messy stuff done, I'm gonna go down and just paint at least the top of this so that I can throw a wash down on it too at the same time. And get that metallic on there. And that way he'll pop off his base a little bit, look a little bit more finished. And you can see again what I'm talking about when I say big colors to small colors, right? Like whatever the primary amount of model color is going to be, start with that, work your way down, work your way down, work your way down. And then the same for washes. Although I typically go backwards for washes. I do least common wash to most common wash. So there's my base coat for that guy finished. And then we're gonna do some, I think, Agrax Earthshade. Ye old Agrax Earthshade. It's a modern classic, if you will. What do we got here? Americana paint on a Titan. I don't know what that means. Americana paint, I think, is probably the paint like Hobby Lobby or whatever sells. Seems the model's in focus, in frame and in focus 95%. Everyone said fantastic. Jack Fletcher says they made these Terminators into Dark Angels. Had to trim off the metric ton of blood drops. Yeah, there's so many. Oh my God, I would have just started with, I would have just done different Terminators. That seems like too much work. So I'm going to, I actually like to thin my Agrax just a little bit. I find it's too dark sometimes, but I'm gonna put a dot of water in it. They say you don't have to, you can just do it out of the pot, but I don't want to do that. I'm gonna put a little bit more water in just so it flows a little bit better. And then throw it down on these skulls. And again, that's just gonna separate the two metallics, give you a nice dark line around all the skulls, and then just warm them up a little bit. Get that little bit of brown. And if you want to, you could also paint it directly into the cracks on this. There's a lot of hard edges here, so what I'll do is I'm gonna paint it around the edge of where the Genestealer is. That's gonna make that pop around all the rivets and stuff. But I'm not gonna just like slather it onto the metallic. I want it to look like it's built up in areas, and I wanna use it to make the Genestealer pop off the rest of this. So putting it into the recesses kind of like intentionally, as opposed to just slathering the whole model with it. And then making sure I get those claws too. I'm gonna try and get his mouth, because that'll change the tone of the tongue and also separate the teeth for me. So make sure I get some in there. And then flip to the other side. Thin that down a touch, we'll drop of water in it, and then get in all those little areas. And then I can paint that little pipe and wire and stuff afterwards, and it'll have a nice dark line around the edge of it, right? There'll be a nice sort of like separation between the metallics and the piping. And I'm also gonna throw some just onto this little bit of tubing, into the hands, around those claws, like I said again, on his little like, I don't know what you'd call that, his Bajoran little nose wrinkle. Throw out some D Space 9 there, because Genestealers and Bajorans, so I guess at some point they have simulated Bajor, and the Bajorans all had their nose wrinkles incorporated into the Genestealer. That's a weird deep cut. I don't know how many people in the chat are gonna get that. That was the most Ash thing ever. And then same with on the back here, where his carapace is sort of like segmented. I'm gonna do a bit of the wash just to make that pop again too. And then into the recesses, just sort of intentionally again around all the machinery. So I'm gonna do brown on these, because most of what I'm gonna have washed, I think, on both these miniatures is gonna be brown. It's just the gun, I think, and some of the cleaner bits that I'll do with the Null Oil. Get that stuff to pop out too, right there, in the mouth. Looking pretty fantastic. A little bit right there, a little bit right there. Not bad for like an hour, right? Like, that's pretty good. That's a not terrible base coat. Like, you could easily play with those, I'm pretty sure. And no one would go, oh, gross, you play with base-coated miniatures? And again, it's just about doing things in the right order. So I'm going to use this wash once again on the purity seals. It's going to help separate that color, give some definition to this armor after all the dry brushing, right? So on the purity seal, it's going to make that pop. I'm also going to put a little bit on his toes, right? Make that front toe plate pop out. And then around the base of the foot to make this separate. Because again, the bases are just like flat. You don't need to do too much. You can just kind of intentionally paint the wash into and around the feet on the base plate there, because I want to use the Nuln Oil for most of the rest of it. And then the back of that purity seal, and that Crux Terminatus and that purity seal. And I'll go back in and I'll highlight all that later. Get the Aquila on the, or the Aquila, sorry, on the front plate. Another purity seal, and you can see already how the Warpstone glow is getting darkened down with that little bit of wash, right? It's not quite as vibrant green anymore. It's not like an obnoxious green. And then I'll make that shoulder one pop too. Pop, pop. I don't know why I just did a community reference, but I did. Sorry, Dan Harmon. Don't demonetize me. No, there's a little gold piece there on the end of that chain I completely forgot about. That's okay. I'll go back and touch it up later. As long as it gets washed, I can just dry brush it and it'll look fine. There we go. And then I think it's just a little bit of Nuln Oil on this guy. And we're done, man. Not too shabby. Nuln Oil, where are you? Astro Granite Debris. You'd think that someone who is trying to do this in a professional manner would have pulled all of these colors out originally. But that is not who you guys are watching in any way, shape, or form. Oh no, it's right in front of me. It is actually in front of me. That's why I couldn't find it, because I went looking for it instead. It's a little bit of Nuln Oil Gloss, because I had Chris and Jay when Nuln Oil Gloss got discontinued. I had Chris and Jay at Lords of War Games and Hobbies just sell me a box of it. I was like, just give me everything you have. I Ron Swanson them. I was like, I want you to give me all the eggs and bacon that you have. And they're like, what? And I was like, I want to make sure you didn't misunderstand me. I want all the Nuln Oil Gloss, because I loved Nuln Oil and Agrax Earthshade Gloss. I thought they were fantastic for doing metallics. They kept the sheen on. Like, they were just a great technical tool. And they came in tall boys, which I also really liked. So I just bought them all, and they won't dry out because they're liquid. Or so far, I haven't had any of them dry out. So put some in the back there. Put all the metallics and all of the rubber seals on this guy I'm going to do in the black. And I think what I'll also do is I might actually just go over the blood drops, because that's just going to give me a little bit of separation for them. So when I do paint them either black or white later on, they'll have that defined for where I want to paint. Just help me out there. And the gloss actually gives this a really nice sort of capillary action, so they do go in the recesses really nicely. Like, they do make little details like that pop out. And I think, oh, there's one right there. Oh, there's some on the knee. Some right there, some right there. In there, and in there. And I think that's it, just the mouth vent. And I'll do the eyes at the same time. And I think that's it. Let that sucker dry. And that's Basecoats and Washes, man. All done. Oh wait, no they're not. No, they're not, Ash. The most important pièce de résistance. We have the door plate, which I forgot about, which I completely forgot about because it's so dead stupid simple. And again, I'm just going to thin down some of this Nuln Oil, or not Nuln Oil, sorry, Agrax, and just paint it in sort of intentionally around the diamond plating to make that bounce. And then on the other side as well. And I think we're done. And now we're done. That guy can dry. And drying time's here, and that's the perfect place for a logical conclusion for the end of the Basecoats and Washes video. There we go, 2 test miniatures. Again, sharing lots of colors, which is going to keep this sped up. So like nice and speedy. You can crank out a bunch of these in one go. So what I'm ended up doing probably now that I'm done is doing all these at the same time, like just sitting down with the rest of this, and in probably, I mean, how long have we been live? An hour or so, maybe. Yeah, just about an hour, just under an hour. I'll be able to do, it's 4 more Space Marines and another 10 base or door plates. No, 7 more door plates, 10 more Genestealers, and this guy probably take me another hour because I'm not talking. I'm just gonna be buckling down and doing it. And like at this stage, like you could just play a game. Like at the base coated stage, you could absolutely just sit down and play a game. I don't think anybody would say like, those aren't painted. They're basically painted. But the next video, we're gonna go through and do some highlights and some details and just kind of like zhuzh these up, take them to the next level and finish them off so that we have like the last final stages. But in between now and then for that video, I'll get all of these miniatures to this stage. And yeah, and you guys can see the next step basically happen. I might do 2 different miniatures. I might stick with these miniatures. Tell me in the comments what you think I should do. If you're a patron and you watch this live, thank you so much for being a patron. You make this possible. And of course, you'll be able to hang out after this video and do a Q&A in the chat because we do like a 10-minute intro and a 10-minute outro. The patrons help out a lot with me staying in the frame, which I just wasn't there again for a second because I was staring at the camera and just generally like troubleshooting and then any questions they have about this process afterwards, they can just ask me in real time. So thanks for watching, everybody. This was a blast. I'm so excited to actually get this on the table and play some games, and we'll see you next time.